from last time. And go ahead.
I wasn't able to.
You all are rolling fast, as always. Wonderful. So,
We weren't hearing audio when you were speaking.
We're not on? Sorry.
No.
It's up to you guys.
It's okay.
There's nothing material we voted on. It's okay.
Just wanted to give you a little heads up.
Oh.
I know. Congratulations to me. Yeah, well, wait, is it just everyone here except for me? Is it congratulations?
It was
Jim, Ben.
Nia. No, Ben was. He's on a different cycle.
He's on my cycle.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So, Nia, Commissioner Ross,
Yes.
Commissioner, don't know your last name. Shen.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner, Chair.
Yeah.
Congratulations all. Yes, welcome. Yes.
So we're excited to have Sunya Shen join us today, and her first official day as a commissioner is June 1st. Her professional background is in law, but she is a self-professed lifetime supporter of the arts, and we very much look forward to having her join us on the commission.
Awesome.
Great.
So the next item for staff comments we have, well, I should say, future Commissioner Shen, do you want to say anything? You have to use the mic.
Come up to the mic and tell us. Give us 5 minutes.
Oh my.
Maybe an hour.
No, sorry.
No, I don't want to and add to the agenda that that's already heavy tonight. But I just wanted to say I'm so thrilled to be part of this organization. I think this is such a great privilege to have a public arts commission in the city, and creating little spots of oasis for people that come in and out. So really excited to participate. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, we look forward to it.
Thank you.
So the next staff comment I have is regarding the artwork out at the municipal golf course. Joyce Sue's T was installed earlier this month at the golf course. Stay tuned for details on the installation of Birdie in August or September once the grasses and landscaping are established and the area is open to the public. So you can see the T is there under wraps for protection, so you can't really see it.
When is it going to be installed?
In August or September. We don't have an exact date. It depends on how all the landscaping and how the turf takes around it.
Because the golf course opens in November, not till November. Okay.
So we'll coordinate that closely. The next item we have is the Truth Booth. The Truth Booth was in front of City Hall April 19th. More than 80 truths were recorded and hundreds of wonderful conversations, both between staff and the community, and just spontaneous conversations all around this bubble about truth, transparency, and government. And it was a pretty fun and pretty exhausted day. We were all pretty hoarse at the end of it. And Nadia, do you have the video teed up that was put together? Booth is just one of the many temporary public art installations that we bring to King Plaza. In front of City Hall is the ideal place to have rotating, ongoing temporary installations that bring people together and stimulate discussion.
Locations. I mean, we did 30-some last year in the United States as part of a cross-country tour when we went to coast and back. We've been to Afghanistan, South Africa, and Ireland. And yeah, we're on our way to Australia in a month's time, and we're also developing a tour of Mexico.
I think the most impressive thing was the sense of isolation and freedom, that you weren't talking to somebody, but you were talking to everybody, but you didn't feel confronted because you weren't looking at somebody there.
I thought it was really cool that there was a whole truth thing, because I just talked about lying and, like, I don't know, this is just a big reminder that it's important to tell the truth.
It came on the heels of a sculptural installation at UCSF, which used speech bubbles and had a poem translated into different languages.
The idea of what is truth, and especially truth in city government, has become kind of a loaded topic. And for us, the City of Palo Alto has been very committed to transparency and openness and truth. And so the fact that we can host an installation here that really stimulates that discussion and that conversation is incredible. And we're very fortunate to be able to bring this here. Oh, we got some good press when Channel 7 News came out and did a nice little piece on the Truth Booth, and like I said, it was a lot of fun. The next, we have lots of eye candy for the comments tonight, is California Avenue Tunnel. So with part of the maintenance, we'll discuss this a little bit more later this evening as part of our maintenance discussion. But as you all recall, the California Avenue Tunnel, that underwater mural, had deteriorated to a pretty a severe state, as you see from some of these images. Lots of the paint had been gouged out from the bikes trying to get around those bike barricades. A lot of the images had bleached out over time, and it suffered a number of graffiti attacks. And so, as you recall, several months ago, we requested funds for a maintenance project to engage artist Morgan Bricka to come address the worst of the areas of the Cal Ave tunnel, to give it a refresh and to add some of her own flourishes to it. She's done an amazing job, as you can see here, and adding some new pieces like little sea lions in there. And the original artist, Oscar Castillo, was excited to learn about the mural refresh, and is excited to come to California sometime soon and see what was done. So what's interesting is most of the fish there were existing fish, and Morgan added some flourishes, but most of them really, it was amazing to watch her work, because just with a few strokes of the paintbrush, she would make those same fish just completely pop out. So we're really pleased with the job she's done, and hope you all have a chance to go see it soon.
Can I comment on something?
Briefly, yeah.
I just want to say it's outstanding, exceeding like my wildest expectations. She contextualized the existing mural. Like, she added beachscape and wave, and it's amazing. It looks beautiful.
So here Nadia's showing some of the before and after pictures of the same areas where you can see.
I'll ditto the comments too. That's just really fun. I made a little field trip over there to check it out. It's cool.
And
Thank
Morgan
you.
reported that just hundreds of people have had wonderful comments about it and been really excited to see the refresh. So, more eye candy. And finally, this was going to be announced at our last commission meeting, but we didn't have an opportunity to meet. So many of you have already seen it, but the final Palo Alto Public Art logo has been rolled out at this time, and so we're really pleased with that and gotten a lot of really positive feedback on it. So thank you all for your input as we moved along, and yeah, so the rebranding has begun. And then the final announcement, which we'll discuss more in depth later, finally for anyone who may be listening, is Code Art. Code Art is happening June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and we're really excited about it. All the installations on Thursday, they don't open until 1:30, and they go till about 9 o'clock, and they're all on slightly different schedules, but the other 2 days, it's roughly between 11 a.m. and 9 p.m. that the exhibits will be open. So again, you can go to cityofpaloalto.org/public art and click on the Code Art tab for all of the information there. And that's it for staff comments.
Okay, thanks, Elise. So our first bit is the approval of Charles Sowers for the Junior Museum and Zoo project.
So we'll walk you through a little bit of the JMZ project. Many of you may remember it came to the commission several months ago to sort of kick off the artist selection process. We did go through, there have been a few changes. If you could go back to the first slide, please, Nadia. And so I just wanted to highlight some of the areas that are being targeted for public art. If you could go, is this the, oh, it's delayed. Okay. So the tunnel through the building, see with the blue line, and I don't believe that was part of the presentation the last time you saw it, but if you look at the side images, the desire was to create this better pedestrian entrance for the people coming from the middle field side who may be able to come through, and it's an opportunity to really play with light, and that could be an opportunity for an artist to get engaged there. There's a bridge over the bioswale area, which could also be of interest to an artist. Keep in mind that part of the call was that the public art should also reinforce the mission of the JMZ and their engagement of children and families. There is a Dawn Redwood courtyard there. And then if you could go to the next slide, please. And then the entry plaza, and the entry plaza is really a key area where there is some space, and there is an architectural element you'll be able to see in one of the subsequent slides that could have something architecturally integrated on that facade that could be wind-driven or have some sort of interaction with the sun or something that is in keeping with the Junior Museum and Zoo. There's the pecan area, which could be interesting and playful. And then there's also the park arrival. So keep in mind the Junior Museum and Zoo is part of this complex. You've got the Girl Scout house adjacent. You've got Lucy Stern right there. You've got the entrance to Rinconada Park. There's a lot happening around it. And so there are a lot of considerations and logistics to think about. And Rai, if there's anything you want to add, I know Rai's been very closely tied to this project. So in this rendering, you can see that front facade where people enter into the ticket area that could integrate something, something architecturally integrated. And there you see the front plaza. This is the tunnel. And then here's the bioswale bridge. So you see those areas that were called out previously. And here's the view from Middlefield Road going through that tunnel. And then you see the entrance there. So there's covered walkway. Is that what we're, okay, it's a covered walkway, sorry. It's apparently now a covered walkway. So we did put out an open call for artists. We got 250 applications. As you probably know, artists like to do children's science facilities. I mean, because they can do things that are playful and fun, and so we knew we would get a lot of applications, and all of us on the staff were kind of, you know, betting how many we would get. None of us got even close. So, so from that, of course, we had to go through all of those applications. There were a significant number, which happens a lot with calls, who were just, they were not qualified. And then we had 3 separate pre-panels to cull that number down to the final 20 that went to the full panel. So that panel was made up of Stephen Huss, who's the public art manager for the city of Walnut Creek, Shelley Willis, who's the former executive director of Sacramento Metropolitan Arts Commission, Sarah Vaquero, who's from CAW Architects. We always have the architect on the project. Commissioner Lauren Gordon was part of that selection process as well. Lauren Angelo, who's a community member and friend of the JMZ board member. Tina Keegan, who's the director of exhibitions for the Junior Museum and Zoo. And of course, Raina Halpern was part of that process as well. And so from that group, 4 artists were selected to make a presentation to the panel and talk about their previous work, give the panel a clearer picture of who they are, and share a little bit more about their design development process. So after that took place, the selection panel chose Charles Sowers. And now we can share a little bit more of Charles and some of what he had shown. And some of these really require video because they move, but what you're seeing is a still here of an artwork where you see water freezing and thawing, and the optics are blown up, so it's really evident, so the science is really present. He's an artist who's been engaged with the Exploratorium quite a bit. If any of you have had the pleasure of going there and really playing and exploring kind of a similar environment, really trying to be hands-on and engaging and teaching. So again, playing with this microscope, a blow up of, this is sand moving under vibrations. And so again, playing with natural elements, giving unseen forces a way to be seen, giving them a physical presence. This one, a drip chamber. So again, you get the idea. He works a lot with these natural elements. This is a piece with a mirror that you can change the angles to it and see how it can blend in with the sky or contrast. This is a wind-driven piece on the facade of a building, so it's constantly changing, always in motion, depending on the gusts of wind. This is as well, so that entire facade moves with the wind, and there are a number of high-powered magnets that keep it together enough so they move as a sheet instead of being so individual like the previous one. And here's another view of it. And then some of you may have seen this piece in the San Francisco airport where you turn the cranks and the butterflies go up really high and you have to keep turning. As soon as you let go, they start to float back down. It's a very popular piece. This is another piece he's done. Clearly, this is an interior as well, but an experience where as visitors try and go get into the light moves. And this is a close-up of a smaller piece, another wind-driven piece with lightweight. So he's a lot of his pieces really have to do with wind. This is another version as well. Is that it? Yep. So I don't know if Commissioner Gordon would like to speak at all to the experience of being on that panel or some of the discussions that took place there.
It was a great opportunity being on that panel, and the 4 artists that were the finalists really, I thought, did an outstanding job. I don't know if I can talk about how we selected Charles, but he was really at the top choice of everyone, so that was great to have that. And we have a follow-up artist just in case things don't move forward, but he was engaging and spent a lot of time with us, and because of his work at the Exploratorium, I think he'll be a great choice. It was a delight. Thank you.
So the criteria that the panel used to score the artists were strength of their previous work in similar environments, suitability to the Junior Museum and Zoo, durability of materials, and a high degree of audience engagement. So staff plans to engage Charles Sowers in a design contract. then bring that design back to the Public Art Commission for approval before we engage him in a fabrication and installation contract. So at this time, staff is requesting that the Public Art Commission approve Charles Sowers as the project artist for the Junior Museum and Zoo.
If I could just add one thing that I think is really exciting about this project, besides everything, is that the architects are really welcoming and excited about not just working with the artists, but how public art can really enhance their design and really do some things that they can't do. So I think they really have come over the last year to really get that public art's an incredibly powerful solution with some of their design interests.
Which isn't always the case.
At least this looks great. Can you just refresh us? What's the scale of the design project? How much money is it we're recommending?
Oh, as far as the project budget?
Yeah.
So the art budget right now is estimated between $150,000 and $200,000.
That's the total budget, and just for the design phase, are we voting on that now, or the design piece?
No, just the entire
entire piece.
art
Okay, got it.
budget,
Got it.
and we would just enter into a portion of that
Got
for
it.
the design phase.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve?
Yes, I move that, can I do that?
Yes.
Okay. I move that we approve Charles Sowers, is that how you say his last name? Sowers?
Sewers.
Sewers? For the project at the Junior Museum and Zoo.
And I will second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so moved. Great. Our next item is the bike boulevards.
So some of you may be aware, there's several-year process of bike boulevards that are coming throughout Palo Alto to really link the city and create these arteries that are truly safe for bike crossings. And part of that plan is to have a number of enhanced crosswalks potentially, and there are a number of raised intersections. So that's something completely different where essentially it would be a four-way stop and the entire intersection is raised up, usually with some sort of, the plan as it stands now is for a stamped concrete, some sort of decorative stamped concrete, so that vehicles really see that there's something different here, slow down, you go up like a bit of a road hump or something like that. And so we've been in discussions with our friends in transportation about the best way to integrate public art, because there are public art dollars over the course of several years that will be coming into our pooled funds from these projects. So one of the opportunities we discussed is actually this raised intersection here, which is on Lewis and Fielding near the Ohlone School. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that. It's a neighborhood there, but it is adjacent to a school. It is extremely heavily trafficked in the morning with bikes. And you can see this is the plan thus far. So they're going to do sort of the stamped concrete. That whole gray area will be raised. And you can see they've called out that other crosswalk, sort of a diagonal, because that's really, in reality, in the morning, after school, where everyone's crossing. And so we've been exploring the possibility of either doing that entire area, and in our research, there are lots of durable paints, but they tend to discolor rather quickly, and the thermoplast really lasts much longer. So Nadia's done a lot of research on that and has a range of options, but some of what we were discussing is whether we do that entire area and have an artist design something that's done in thermoplast, or if potentially we did the crosswalks banding that area as you enter from each of those sides. We could do enhanced crosswalks, and the center area could simply be the stamped concrete, which is similar to on California Avenue when that streetscape was redone. They have the stamped concrete, and it's a little bit sparkly. It kind of gives you that disco feel when you walk across the street. So that's sort of what they're targeting for that center. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Nadia, who's done a lot of research on what kind of budget implications there are, and some good examples, too.
Yeah, absolutely. So just like Elise said, most of my research focused on pricing around this project. It's a very interesting project. So the pricing is really comprised of several elements. There is an artist design fee, material costs, installation costs, permits, and traffic control fees. So when we talk about material costs, Ennis Flint is the sole company in the United States that manufactures the various types of thermoplastic materials that are used in crosswalks. Most commonly used materials are traffic patterns and deco mark. So if any of you had a chance to experience the crosswalks in San Jose, so for example, those are all done with deco mark. And absolutely. Let me just, yes, right here. Okay. So they, the lifespan is pretty good. They last really well, like in this heavily trafficked area. So the only maintenance treatment is required is just occasional power washing of the walks. So talking about design costs, really it depends on density of design, volume, and number of colors involved. But here we're talking about between $15 and $18 per square foot. So I believe this particular project cost about $17 per square foot to manufacture the materials. There's also an installation fee, which comes up to just over $5,000 per a day of installation. Of course, artist design fees and administrative costs like encroachment permits, traffic control, and so on. So if we talk about the cost for a single, standard size crosswalk like this one, which comes up, usually it's like 30 by 6 feet, we're looking at roughly $15,000 per single crosswalk. If we are, so we also did some, rough calculations for this entire area, which is about 140 by 30 feet. And, we landed at about $80,000 for that particular area.
To do the entire block?
Exactly, yes.
The entire gray space. So we wanted to bring this to the commission to sort of discuss which directions we want to go. We very much see this as a pilot. It's the first time we've worked with thermoplast. And keeping in mind that it's a residential area, and so we also want to be sensitive when we put out the call. It's probably unlikely that we want something quite as bright or intricate as we may want in a downtown commercial setting versus in a neighborhood setting. So there's, as Nadia was saying, there's a lot of variations in the budget for this project. And so, we would be interested in hearing from you what you think as far as, should we try and do a whole block? Let's see what happens. Do we want to just start with doing the crosswalks around the block and let them do the rest of it as stamped concrete and see how those work? And I don't know if, Nadia, if you've had a chance to cost out what that would be, because if we're looking at 4 crosswalks for that one.
Well, yeah, if we're looking, 4 standard crosswalks would be $60,000.
Which then gets us pretty close to the estimated cost for
Right.
doing the whole thing. So, so anyway, we wanted to bring this as a discussion item because we're a little uncertain about the right way to proceed and would like to hear from the commission about what your thoughts are.
I have a few questions. I guess the first would be, so what portion of the budget would the commission be asked to assume? Like, what part does the Ways and Means and Traffic take on, and then what part are we expected?
Well, the numbers that Nadia gave you would be us. So it's being built with the stamped concrete. Unless we decide we're going to come in and do the artwork, then they won't stamp the concrete, and the thermoplast just goes on top. So it's like a blank canvas.
I guess my feeling is, I think that these San Jose photos are amazing. I think that, like, I love them, and they really, like, they're impactful, and they're colorful, and they're exciting, and it animates what is just, like, routine. I guess what makes me a bit sad is that if the whole project, by virtue of the fact that it's in a residential area, has to be kind of safe and standard and not exciting, it's kind of a shame to spend the amount of money when it doesn't really read as art, is my feeling. But I love the idea. I wish we could pilot it where we think that would be appropriate. I mean, if I lived on that street, I'd be thrilled. So, but I understand the, like, majority of people in this town also.
And I would say that while this is a more intricate design, it's not. We've seen a lot of them that have, red and orange, that is just really poppy. This is a little bit more subtle design, and we can put some parameters and guidelines around it. So I could see someone doing something with 2 or 3 colors that could be really delicate and beautiful over that space and really unique, without necessarily having to have all those super vibrant colors. So I could see that being an avenue to go. Anyway, I
guess
just offer that.
Well, no, and I appreciate it, because I think I love the idea. It's just, I think when you already have dictated the material, you've already dictated the space, it's two-dimensional. Really, how do you then differentiate it? It is through color and pattern. So then if you're already talking about somber and subtle, that's just, like, not really in my wheelhouse, like to go. But I understand there is beauty in subtlety. It's just, I am for impactful, colorful art. So just my 2 cents, but it's exciting. It's really, like, exciting for the city.
I would just want to add that one other consideration, and part of the reason this seemed like a good one to start with from transportation's point of view, is because there's less heavy trucks and heavy traffic on it, that'll deteriorate it much faster. And so I'm sorry I didn't offer that sooner, but that was part of the reason that Lewis space perhaps made sense, is that there were fewer trucks, so it was less likely to deteriorate as quickly. And another thing the commission may consider is that if just the crosswalk surrounding that area could potentially be bolder, because it's a little balanced by something a little more neutral in the center, having the stamped concrete. So I could see both of those things working out.
So I have I like the idea as well, and but I have a couple questions regarding, first of all, safety. I definitely think it's something that kids could, especially, just go into the middle of the road and just stop and start looking, and I would be that makes me nervous. And then also, what's the time frame? Is it temporary, or is it going to be eventually long-term? And if it's long-term, we're going to have to think about the cost. I mean, obviously. So that would be my 2 big questions that I have.
So I would say it's long-term temporary. Nothing lasts forever. And, we talked to transportation about, at some point, if it deteriorates to a certain point, they can go over and do standard thermoplast over it, unless we wanted to redo this at some point. But the lifespan of the thermoplast should be good for, I don't know how many years, but much longer than a painted surface. As for your query about safety, there have been a lot of these crosswalks that have been installed. It's become pretty common, actually, that people are doing interesting ones, like you've seen the ones in the Castro district, the rainbow crosswalks and whatnot. And we haven't heard any reports of of issues with that. Nadia, have you seen
Yeah,
anything?
actually, if I can add, on the contrary, there have been studies done that found that actually these crosswalks, have a very positive impact, and the areas prove to be safer.
Where in Castro is the other one? I've never seen the Castro streets. Do you know where?
They have several of them on,
So,
just
okay.
sort of on the main drag there.
I haven't
A
looked.
few
I guess
of their
maybe I've never
crosswalks.
looked and noticed. Okay.
Can I just add one thing? The way that I see this is it's a wonderful, almost beta test. The city has a huge project of $16 million project on really improving biking on streets, creating a whole lot more pedestrian and bike access and, paths. And this is a really great place to start. And I think if the partnership is fruitful and successful, it could lead to a whole lot more. And some would be in more urban or highly trafficked areas. So I think, the way I see this is an exciting beta test too. I mean, a first step as opposed to the only step is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I agree with, excuse me, I agree with everything that's been said. I think this is an exciting project. And I was on the San Jose Arts Commission when this project first came forward with these crosswalks. And the first designs that came forward were voted down because they just did not go with where the surrounding area. And I think that's a big consideration. If it's a quiet neighborhood, then I think the artwork has to reflect what's in that neighborhood. If it's downtown, then maybe it can be a little more.
Can you elaborate a little bit what you mean by the designs? Just so
I don't remember, but it was chaotic. So it just didn't fit in the area. And if this is going to be a residential area, then let's make it fit the artists, have it fit. And if it's downtown, it's maybe a little more vibrant. So I think the area really dictates on what you want in the crosswalk. And I think this is a great idea. And I think, as Rai was saying, if this is a pilot program, then this would be a great start. And I kind of like the idea of just doing the crosswalk and the stamped center in the beginning. Just to let it stand out by itself and let people see it that way.
I had a few questions. So looking at I'm just going to clarify, what is this? Is this the bike path? Is this the curb? Where is this the sidewalk? What is this area?
That, I believe, is, looks like landscaping along the edge of the curb there.
Oh, this is landscape. So on both sides, these are hedges?
Well, no, it's like grass.
Grass?
Like grass, like native grasses.
So this is
Right, because here you've got sea landscaping, new tree.
Okay.
So here you're off the streetscape.
So this is the area that we're talking about?
Yes, all the gray area.
Okay. And what's the, so if you did it, if we weren't involved at all, what's the plan of record? Like, what would they do? So it gets raised, and then what part would be thermoplast? So if we're not involved at all, what's their current plan?
The center gray part will be a stamped concrete. It's raised. It'll have its normal, you see the stop thermoplast entering the space. And then I believe they're planning to do a slightly darker concrete for that diagonal across there.
Got it.
But it's just stamped concrete, and again, it'll be slightly raised, so it gives
Okay.
drivers a real sense that that you're in some sort of crosswalk.
Okay. And so there is no thermoplast, just the raised concrete. And is it raised a couple of inches?
It's just a few inches.
Okay.
Sort
And-
of like a road hump or something like that.
And so if we are involved, then we're talking about having thermoplast on top of that raised area? Or is it in lieu of?
No, it would be,
It's
it would
in
be
addition.
in addition
Okay.
to. So instead of doing the stamping, they would leave it plain.
Right.
So that we can
put
thermoplast
something
onto
on
it, and
top
the
of it.
thermoplast will adhere.
Okay. What's the longest thermoplast? Like, how long has thermoplast been around? Like, what's the most aged thing? Can the company tell us, like, this is something? I mean, I know every street's going to be different. But I'm kind of curious. It seems that when we're asking the question, like, how many years, no one knows. I'd want to know before we vote on this, how long does it last? And if, it just, if, what's the oldest one? Is it 5 years? Is it 10
Right.
years? Because $80,000, it's not a trivial amount of money. And I'd want to know a little bit more, what's the timeline that this has to get decided also?
So from the preliminary research that I've conducted so far, we're talking about 10 years.
10 years,
use
okay.
As, as a sound sort of condition.
Is there a warranty?
There is a warranty. I need to follow up on
Okay.
the years for the warranty. Yeah, with just ongoing maintenance efforts.
Like the power washing?
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. It should, be really good, for
I mean,
the next 10
I'm
years.
curious, so if this is a pilot, I mean, one of the things I'd want to know, like, I love the idea, but I'd want to know, like, okay, because it helps us make our
Right.
case, if we understand, if you were to paint it, like, what's their budget? Like, if they were to do what they would normally do, and maybe they're painting some of it, or there's some, like, what would the budget be, and how much of an incremental spend would we be? If this lasts longer,
Right.
and provides a safety lift, well, that's I think, also in our benefit.
So when I was in contact with our colleagues from the San Jose Downtown Association, I asked them how, they enjoy the quality of the current state, right, of the
How old is it?
crosswalks.
About 3 years.
Yes.
3 years. So it's-
and,
so it's new. It's relatively new.
they're really happy with the present condition
Okay.
of the crosswalks.
It's a really,
And
it's like
those
right
are heavily
downtown.
trafficked, so some of the variety is also in how heavily trafficked. Do you have heavy trucks that go through
Right.
there, or is it mostly cars?
Okay.
Buses.
And is the $80,000, so there's a few different, you mentioned the different cost pieces. There's a design piece, there's the intricacy, the number of colors. Did you make a baseline assumption about what you're paying for design? How many colors? I'm trying to remember what are the assumptions?
So I went ahead with the highest price per square foot at
Okay.
$18
So it could, so that's the max it would be
right.
for the cost.
And so in my $80,000 estimate, I included, just average artist design fees, material costs, and installation costs.
So what did you assume for the artist fee?
Well, I counting $3,000 based on the San Jose experience, but again, it would be a number specific to our community.
Okay. And is the plan would be, I mean, I think Ben's point about the community input, which is the plan that we would have a panel? Like, what are you guys, what is staff thinking about in terms of how we get from a design to something that, like, I'd hate to spend $80,000 and people are like, oh, I don't like this. So what's the thinking about how we would?
Well, I think this is definitely something we would have to reach out to the neighborhood too, and there is some time sensitivity to it because this Bike Boulevard project is out to bid right now.
Okay.
And they're likely to phase this to take place this summer, this particular area, because it's adjacent to a school.
Yep.
So they want to get it completed before school starts.
Okay.
So, my initial thinking was that this would be more of a local call for designers, because what we're looking for is a
just
graphic design of some sort. And that definitely we would have to coordinate with the community about what is appropriate for that space, because, as Ben mentioned earlier, we don't want to have something that just completely is a misfit for that community.
Yeah.
I think the
Okay.
Buddhist temple is right there, half a block away, Ohlone School, and then the rest is all homes, so
It is very quiet.
it is.
I just want to also
We
go
could
back
pull it up on Google Maps, probably.
to just understand kind of the goal of this particular project. Is it just like a decorative piece, which I'm assuming it is, but at the same time, going back to my earlier question about, are we going to block it off at times where people can, like, be more interactive with it? Or is it just, the idea is that people, it's kind of, not, I don't want to use the word, I don't know even what word to use, but like, just a quick kind of, you're walking past it, or you're driving past it, and it's interactive in terms of somebody can help me out here, but.
I think you
Does
have
that
to.
make sense, kind of,
It's a
in terms of-
crosswalk. We're trying to beautify a
we're just using
crosswalk.
it as-
I wouldn't think of it like you're going to contemplate in the middle of the street. I mean,
It's Lewis and Field.
Because there are some pieces that I think are kind of interesting that I would like, I personally would want to go and look at more closely.
So,
It's one of those things I'm just trying to think about
Yeah.
the goal.
There is, Palo Alto, as you well know, has a lot of neighborhoods and neighborhood associations, either kind of informal or formal. And, you know, hopefully they would love it and want to do some kind of opening of it. But yeah, it's a functional piece.
That's a good.
It's a safety
Yeah.
enhancement, which is in keeping with what the entire Bike Boulevard project is about, is enhancing safety for pedestrians and bikes.
And at night, could some of the, like, does it pop up at night, or is it just?
Well, the thermoplast does have that bit of sparkle to it, and also because it is raised, I mean,
If you search for Oloni,
you would see it.
O-H-L-O-N-E.
It's
There you go.
because fielding doesn't line up with Amarillo, and so the kids, they do a diagonal.
It's not a straight intersection. It's all sort of off kilter.
Yeah, and I bet during those morning hours, it really impacts.
So like, they're coming across them like that, across the.
Yes, so here's, wait, where'd we go? Okay, so here's Fielding. So it connects, that intersection essentially connects Fielding with Amarillo.
Yeah.
Here on Lowe's.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so here's the Buddhist temple.
And school.
In Ohlone. So, and I purposefully went out there one morning, just, at 7:45 to 8:05, and it was just packed. And a lot of people are cutting across that Desire line. So, traffic has done a lot of the outreach to the community groups about these spaces, and we worked with them because there are quite a few of these blocks that are raised, and there were a number of them that they felt like the community might be less receptive to. And so that's part of what led us to identify this one as a good potential.
And do you have any forward view of, like, if this were successful, what then the next potential site might be, or how many more there may be that we would be looking at to fund? Or?
Well, this one came at us rather quickly, and we felt like it was a good opportunity. As Raina said, is kind of a pilot. Like, let's try it out, see what the experience is like. But there are going to be a lot more of these bike safety and transportation projects coming on the horizon. So we are pooling funds for them. And it seems like a great way to integrate artwork into that experience to enhance safety without necessarily manifesting in an object.
And I just wanted to add the opportunity came out of a conversation Elise and I had with the project manager of this, and he so got excited about it, and he totally got the way that art develops place and really fits in with his vision in planning, that he really helped make this happen. So I think what you're seeing is, almost like we're getting towards a real tipping point where public art is really seen as, well, as part of making a city great.
And they're not interested at all in helping with the funding aspect of it. I know you kind of confirmed, yeah.
Well, they have funding for doing what they're doing.
Right, but, okay.
Yeah.
Because it's an investment. I mean, personally, I think
Of course it is.
It's a neat investment, but it's definitely something that's a lot. I'm just curious if there's other groups that could help with the funding part.
Not that have been identified at this time. It's really seen as an opportunity for public art, and because the funds were pooled from the construction of these projects, we don't really have leeway to then go ask again for more funds from the construction of the project. The art allocation's already been given.
So this is out of the standard allocation. Okay. So, okay, great. Okay, all right. So I was thinking, okay. Okay. I think given that it seems like a very timely opportunity to cooperate with the rest of the departments and to learn, and I move that we approve this project as a first step of potentially many. And I'm excited to see how it goes. And I would suggest doing the full Monty, do the
full.
Yeah. So I make that motion that we approve.
And I would second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So moved.
You guys, I learned a lot from all of your questions. It's great.
Now, to clarify, the whole area would be thermoplast?
That is what we
And
will
that's- we're
go.
talking about 80K.
Yeah, so that's what we will go forward with and explore, and we will report back to the commission as we move forward. It may turn out, as we move forward, there may be pushback from the neighborhood where it doesn't make sense to do the whole thing, and we may decide to scale it back, which will, yeah, or if it ends up more expensive. So we'll come back to the commission, but we know.
And would that not to exceed 80,000, or are we okay with that?
That would be implied. It's a not to exceed 80,000.
Yeah, so just if it wasn't clear, so this is a municipal project, and so the 1% for art, that's how this is being funded. And so the overall project, is 100x what this is, and so that's how it's handled. Okay, great. So our next item is the Albuquerque.
Yeah, so Nadia has some photographs. So Albuquerque is, you all may know, is the large sculpture along Embarcadero Road in front of the Art Center by Gail Wagner. It's been out there for quite some time, and it's a beloved piece that sometimes is a slide, sometimes people sit under the shaded portion of the piece to have a quiet moment to themselves. It's surprising how often I see someone doing that. And it has suffered a few graffiti attacks, including this last year, so you can see some of the graffiti removal there at the top area. It's been about 5 to 6 years since the last time the piece was painted. You can see here where something was taped to it and pulled off some of the paint. There are some scrapes, here's some gouges. So when the metal is exposed in such a way, it really leaves the piece vulnerable to rusting, and it really is in need of treatment. So, so Nadia has gathered a few different bids and has identified a paint superior and more durable to what we used last time, and also has an incorporated graffiti coat. And so, and the estimated lifespan is 10 years for that. So, yes, without fading, which, as some of you may know, in these kinds of pigments, the reds are the first things to fade. So, so we are asking from our maintenance budget. Nadia has collected an estimate of $9,150. I would ask for a not to exceed 10,000 in case there are small overruns or other things that we have to take into consideration.
What was the original color? How close, and knowing that the red's faded and it's been 5 or 6 years, what did it look like originally? Is it pretty close to the original red? Do you have any shots from when it was first or last painted?
I can pull it up in a few minutes. It's rather faded.
It is, okay.
Right.
So it'll pop a bit more.
It will definitely pop. Right.
But it's not going to pop.
It's not going to be fire engine red.
It's not going to pop fire engine red. It's going to pop like real, not cherry red like that kind of red, but like a real cherry, right? So it's
some
more
browns to it.
Yeah, that brownish red. And the last time we had it painted, we actually had Gail Wagner come out to the site, and he and I must have spent half a day looking at paint colors out in the sun and then in shade and whatnot. And so he found a color he really, really liked and felt like it was the closest to the original. And this company is able to match that color.
Yes, exactly. So the vendor that we selected, identified, has actually worked on a number of public art installations around the Bay Area, and they're very recommended. And the particular product that they offered, it's called Precision Coatings, and it's a product specifically designed for external steel surfaces. It's not going to be glossy, it's going to be eggshell, so the color will be fresh, but it's not going to be screaming at us. It will take them about 2 weeks to create a perfect match, and we'll go through those and just approve the final color that will apply.
I have a quick question. Are there other pieces that have the similar issue that need to be fixed, and perhaps what my question is, can we do several of them, and could we get a deal, so to speak, in terms of, is it worth us investing in doing several at a time rather than just focusing on one piece?
Each piece is really unique in their needs and what type of paint and situation it's in. To answer your question, there are no other pieces in as dire need of repainting as Albuquerque. And as you may recall, the maintenance funds each year are limited and they do not roll over year to year. And so Albuquerque is the one most in need of treatment that we can address this fiscal year.
We always do, I do appreciate that question, and we always do look for that, but I think that there isn't a financial savings by grouping either because of the uniqueness of this, but we always think like that. Rest assured.
I move to approve the repainting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we are approved. Nadia, what's the time frame for getting it done?
Well, it will take the vendor a couple of weeks to match the color, and then we'll just go from there. I'm already working on, I have everything ready to put the contract together. Now that the funding is approved, we can definitely move on very fast.
Is it a spray or is it a roller?
It's going to be, I don't think it's going to be sprayed because previously we had some unfortunate, negative experiences with spraying the color, it's uneven. So it's going to be probably rolled over, but we're going to get all these details, once we're ready to move forward with recoating.
Great, thank you. All right, we're done with our action items. We have some non-action items. The first is a mural on what's going on with Mitchell Park.
I'm going to ask Raina Halpern to take this one, please.
Okay. And has the commission heard this at all ever before? Okay, good to know. So, happy to talk about this really briefly. So we have, in the Community Services Department, we have a lot of youth programming, and we've really worked over the last several years to develop our teen services. I think you must have heard about that. We fund teen services programs through the Bryan Street Garage Fund. So one thing that the teen services program has been interested in is this mural, this idea of a mural at Mitchell Park on the outside of the wall that faces the baseball court. And it has been an idea that's been around for about 2 years. Last year we had our first Buoyancy Festival, which was a festival by teens for teens, and as a part of it they created a temporary mural, and so they've been really interested in doing this. So at least jump in if I'm forgetting something major here. So the Teen Services Program, one thing I want you to know is the Teen Services Program is department-wide, so we have recreation, the Children's Theater, and the Arts Center are all heavily involved, and technically our Maker program, MakeX, is also part of the Teen Services Program. So it's a big program that we consider department-wide. So that being said, at the Mitchell Park Community Center, we have a teen room, and we have public art in it. So it's the outside of that room. They're really interested in creating this mural. So Elise and Nadia gave you this handout that kind of goes through the project and the proposal, a little bit about the history of it. The artist Megan Stevens, who's local and did work with the teens for the temporary mural last summer at the Buoyancy Festival, has been selected by the Teen Services Committee to be the artist on this project, and she's put together this proposal with input from the teens. It's all about creating a wall that has symbolic meaning for the teens. So I don't know, did you get a chance to look this over? If not, let me just give you like 1 minute to look it over, because it's quick, there's lots of images, and then we'll go on.
Did you talk about the design?
So will it have anything to do with the Palo Alto or the teens in Palo? It might be in here if I didn't, or should I look in first? Okay.
So as I believe, there was an open call for artists to submit project ideas that the Teen Services Committee reviewed, and Megan Stevens, as I said, was selected. She has worked on the technical theatric side of the Teen Arts Council, which was developed in 2010 in a response to teen suicides, and it's basically focused, it's run through the Children's Theater. It's basically focused on performing arts, although they also do some literary arts, mostly in the form of slams, et cetera. So Megan's been involved in basically set design for the Teen Arts Council. She's gotten to know a lot of the teens, and she was the one whose proposal was selected and developed. The budget for this piece is $10,000. None of it, of course, is coming from our budget here at Public Art. It's through mostly the different teen services funds. So that's the basic proposal, and I just want to talk about why we're giving it. Unless you have any questions, I'll move on to how does it relate to public art? So this is a very interesting question. So, in the public art program, we basically are trying to create standards citywide about the visual landscape that we see. And so this project was really done separately. It's not a public art project. We were not involved in the selection process, but it had its own. So I see this also as kind of a beta test of a teen project that's more in the public realm. And I think it'll be interesting to see. They did not include any anti-graffiti coding on this project. They do not have a maintenance budget, and they do understand that its lifespan is probably 1 to 3 years. So I wanted to let you know that, and I think it'll be interesting to evaluate it and how it goes, and maybe work with them if they want to continue this program on some kind of joint selection process in the future. But I think the positive thing is, it's exciting to see their initiative, their interest, and also it's like, more art for the community.
So, a quick question. So since the lifespan is short, are they having ideas to do new murals every couple of years, or is it just going to be for now?
Unclear as to now. I think that's part of why, it would be good for us to help be part of an evaluation process of this.
Yeah.
The Buoyancy Festival last year was its first time, and that did include the creation of a temporary mural then. So this year, the Buoyancy Festival is happening again, and it's spawning the start of this period of creating the actual mural. So we'll see what happens to both the Buoyancy Festival and this idea of that wall being a location for murals.
And is that a local artist, right?
Yes. Actually, was selected and offered a spot in the Coverly Artist Studio program. She was not able to accept it. And she's also part of Code Art. She's one of the artist teams. So, yes. Although we didn't know that. Yeah, it all happened separately.
Well, I like this idea. I think it gets the kids involved. And you're saying if it's maybe 3 years at the most, it could be a lifespan. I'm wondering if it could be like a class project. They start as a sophomore, go through their senior year, and then after 3 years, the next class takes over and they carry it on for 3 years. So it'd be something like that. Could be ongoing for a short period of time, but then you get kids involved, and kids could come and leave over that 3-year period, but still have a really great project. And I think, get the kids involved, and that's what it really counts, what it's really for. So I really like this project.
Just a couple quick questions. Was the non-graffiti an artistic choice, or was it a budgetary?
Budgetary.
Okay. How much more expensive was it to do the graffiti? Is it a lot more?
I don't know the amount, but significant.
Significant. Oh, interesting. So it's like a coating or something that's...
The other issue with adding a graffiti coating for something that is intended to be that temporary is it's difficult to paint over.
Oh.
So if you know that the mural is going to be time limited and there's the potential that after a couple of years they may want to go back to a neutral color, the graffiti coating makes it tremendously difficult to do that.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And who's... is it someone in your department who's administering them? I think this is awesome.
Yes.
And I'm also psyched about it that it's not a staff project. Who oversees this?
So our department, Community Services Department, and we have a Teen Services Committee.
Okay.
Who is overseeing it.
So in deciding to work with Meg, did you guys provide any input to staff?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
Who picked Meg? It was just...
This committee?
Picked Meg.
Yeah. Picked
Okay.
Meg.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Super exciting.
So one other question, so we have obviously our public art collection, but is this considered like a temporary public art collection piece or totally different? Okay.
No, this is, not part of the public art program at all. It's coming to you as a informational because
Yeah, it's relevant.
it's
Yeah.
relevant.
Is there a similar, we're just about to finish at Pally, the Peary amazing gymnasium and facility.
Right.
Is there, and I don't want to get too far off track, but if you just briefly comment, is there anything analogous, or is this a unique thing because it's a teen center, and there are a lot of teenagers at Pally and Gunn, but given that that's something new, is that something that's been discussed at all? If not, maybe just put it on the agenda as something to talk about.
I'm sorry.
So Palo Alto Unified School District has the new gymnasium,
Right.
right?
But what do you mean a mural there? Yeah.
No idea. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No
Okay.
idea.
Great. Thank you for letting us know.
Yeah.
I am kind of curious, though, on the subject of schools, like if a school were to do like a major renovation, does a percent go into percent for art? Is that not city building?
No, public
It's
schools are exempt. And every once in a while, a school in a city will decide it wants to do a public art and will approach a public art program, related to the city, but mostly it's separate. And so whether they do it or not is contained, kind of like Stanford is contained, right? That they do a lot of public art on their own.
Okay. Our next item is about maintenance and deaccession.
Okay, so this is it's a follow-up from a discussion we had at the retreat, discussing some of the artworks that were identified by ARG as pieces in the outdoor permanent collection that are most in need of either conservation work or consideration for deaccession. Additionally, our public art master plan consultants did a little bit of a review of the collection, and so at the retreat, we did discuss the input both from ARG Conservation and from the, as we like to refer to them, the Golden Girls. And so we wanted to revisit that at this point. There are a number of those projects that a couple of them have been addressed, which is great. But now that our deaccession policy has been formalized and is available online, I think it's time for us to go ahead and pick up that discussion that we started at our retreat about some of these projects and which direction we may be leaning, because putting together a deaccession report and request does take some time and work. And so we wanted to just remind the commission that we started down this discussion. We wanted to walk back through those pieces and gather any input that you may have at this point before staff moves forward with further recommendations. And we did talk at the retreat a little bit about what our inclination was at that time, and sort of got a little bit of a straw poll from the commissioners about that direction, and we would kind of like to do the same today and see if anyone's feelings have changed about any of them. And I also want to call out that there is one letter on this subject from Lee Levy on behalf of the Friends of Lytton Plaza regarding digital DNA. And so I just wanted to make sure you all were aware of that.
On its behalf, or?
Yes, he wrote the letter on their behalf, really expressing their interest in the deaccession of digital DNA. Well, that's a whole different discussion. It could be, we'll get to that in a minute. So let's start with Go Mama on California Avenue. So Go Mama dates from 1999, and previous to the recent streetscape revamp on Cal Ave, that pedestal was surrounded by landscape. So it was a little more difficult to approach the sculpture at that time. It would be highly unusual now for someone to commission a sculpture that only had one point of contact, as she does, and have more of the weight up high, because it inherently makes for an unstable structure. And so while there is a little bit of concrete around her foot to help stabilize her, she does move, and we get calls about once a year about people who are concerned about that. And now that the landscaping's been taken away and the sidewalk is immediately around it, she is definitely approached and played with much more, and especially on farmers market Sundays. There are lots of kids up there. So in the ARG report, they called out the unstable structural condition and requested that a landscaping fence or barrier be put around the sculpture so that people could not apply horizontal pressure to it. The Public Art Master Plan, their recommendation, and keep in mind that ARG, they're conservators, so they are not going to come up with a recommendation to deaccession or not deaccession. They're conservators, so inherently they're making a recommendation to keep something there for the long period. And our master planners were looking at it through more the lens of public art administrators. And so their recommendation was actually not to add a fence around it because it would interfere with the whole streetscape, and that the commission considered deaccessioning this artwork. And as we look at the deaccession policies, there are a number of things here that where it could likely qualify for deaccession. And I know at the retreat that was something that we brought up, and I would be interested in hearing some of the input from the commission on that. Go Mama is certainly a piece that comes up a lot in commissioner interviews, where people are asked what their favorite piece or their least favorite piece may be, and so this one does come up quite a bit. On the other hand, there are people in the community who love the piece because it stimulates so much discussion about public art. And keep in mind that as this deaccession policy was put together, it's not about taste or trends in the artwork. It really has to do more with safety and if the materials are inherently wrong for the space or the conditions of the space have changed. So looking at it through that lens where it's not just about an aesthetic choice, I'd be interested to hear what the commission has to say.
I also have one question. Do we have older photos, kind of what Jim was saying about the previous sculpture, Albuquerque, of what they looked like in their early stage of formation? Because I think that would be, for me, something interesting to look at, to see if it would be something, rather than always yes, I was the one who said we should think about deaccessioning, but at the same time, I'm wondering if we saw the piece originally with coat, newer coat of paint, would that change perhaps my, oh, is that the original?
Well, this is what I Googled.
Oh, but like when it first was put into place.
The face has been repainted actually fairly recently, so that may be the image that was just pulled up where the face is more vibrant. The rest of her is bronze, so there's not paint involved. We do have her waxed about once a year.
But are there photos that we have in an archive that we could perhaps look at some of them? Because I think that could be really useful, I think.
Right, so we do have photos of artworks in different years, not in this current compilation that we're presenting here today, but definitely we have archives of the artworks in different stages of their lifetime.
And so in order to make her safe to the public, we needed to put a fence? Is that what I'm understanding, or some sort of barrier?
One of the recommendations would be to put a fence, and it would be challenging to make her completely stable. I mean, there could be a way to remove the sculpture, rework that footing, potentially put a brace on that back leg or something like that to make her more stable. But there are some inherent issues with the stability that both of these people called out, which is the reason why their recommendation is to keep people away from it.
Right. And she's been there for 18 years, right? And enjoyed. And she is running, so maybe she's ready to go.
Okay.
I would move to deaccession the piece. I'm really concerned about we've invested a lot of money in California Avenue to change the streetscape, and I do not like the idea of a piece that's crazy top-heavy that has this old footing, and do not want to see a lawsuit where some kid grabs it and it comes down on top of him. I mean, it would, I think that would be horrible. So I would recommend that and I think the expense that you'd incur to reinforce it, I'd rather just do a new piece, something that's more appropriate for this space. So it's hard when you have a piece that's been, the surroundings have been modified. I don't think a fence around it, that's not really in keeping from what I recall, like how California Avenue is situated, that would really be appropriate. And if I were a merchant or a store owner, like on the street, I'd think, well, I don't want that. Yeah, so given the potential danger, that would be my input. I'm going to defer to staff, but I'd recommend that we deaccession it
No,
from a safety consideration.
we don't have any plans for another piece or identified funding. Does that change your?
No, I don't want art falling on people.
Just for the record.
Yeah. I
And
agree.
also,
Safety's an issue.
for the record, I want to make sure you know that it isn't about to fall. So I want to make sure that it's not
What's
an
the
immediate
recommendation?
danger.
So
But-
if a child were to grab one of the arms, like a 75-pound child, and grab it and yank it, I mean, I don't know what the level of rigor of the testing, but I think if there's a concern,
I think
that,
over time, there is a concern with stressing that rod that's embedded into the base.
is it like rebar that comes into it on the concrete to hold it up, that goes up into the leg, or how's it? Who knows?
There aren't exact drawings, so that's the trick with some of these older pieces, is you don't know what the as-built really is.
If I could add, I agree with Jim. When I'm up on Cal Ave for the farmer's market, which is pretty regularly, it's a worry because that pedestal is a prime seating area for people to sit and eat. And I even wonder if you did add the fence, if it would do anything. Because frankly, unless it was like an unscalable fence, people would still be inside and kids hang on it and it wobbles and it, like, my husband comments on it every single time that we're up there, like, you guys should do something about that. But yeah, it's wobbly and it feels unstable and it's potential issue.
Oops, I'm sorry. So, so the ARG report was a little concerning, talking about the inherent materials of the piece, and going back to a stability issue. And then, as for the public art master plan, planner's recommendations, they shared some of the same concerns, stating that the artwork is not suitable for outdoor display due to the nature of materials, and if relocated to an indoor venue, would require substantial repair. I will say that this artwork has been a subject with the commission for many years. I know Commissioner Ross has been around and heard a lot of these discussions. And I don't recall if you went on some of those scouting field trips where the commissioners and staff really searched for potential indoor venues to house this piece, because we've recognized that having it outdoors is a challenge. And there really just isn't the kind of space that you would need for a sculpture of that scale to allow for circulation all the way around it. So I would, again, ask for the commission's input on how you're feeling about deaccession of digital DNA.
Well, just to follow on to what you're saying, I think that we've also sat and voted for monies and maintenance monies to go in and rectify what really can't be done because it is outside. So all effort has been made to save the piece, and it continues to fail. And I think this is one of not only locational issues, but also just fiscal responsibility. Like, at a certain point, what is the percent that you want to spend of your maintenance dollars on one particular artwork? And I don't know that it becomes irresponsible after a certain point when it's taken up by one particular artwork, that even conservators tell you this is not going to fix it. That, the problem is that it needs to be moved indoors.
Are there any other comments on digital DNA?
I echo what Amanda said and would move to have it be considered for deaccession.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the next one, which is not far from here. The Boy with Fishing Pole, 1976, by Greg Brown. A lot of the issues with this mural were really called out, and ARG is really good about understanding historic structures and buildings, of which this is one. And it's the water that has seeped into the wall that is causing a lot of the major issues with the mural. I mean, the mural has faded over time. Greg Brown did come out and work on it a few times to prolong its life. And there was evidence of some of the previous color schemes underneath that ARG could see when they inspected it. But it's really the conditions at the building roof, wall, and drainage system are just, there's water seeping into that wall that are inherently going to be a problem. And so, ARG's recommendations were really more about trying to stabilize, fix the wall, put some sort of covering up above it. The master plan recommendations were of a different tact, which was more to take high-resolution photographs of these murals so that when they reach the end of their life, they could be reproduced in vinyl and placed elsewhere. And the other thing to consider is, as we call out other people to work on them, because we always had Greg Brown work on them, at some point you start to lose the artist's hand. And they do tend to evolve as much as you try and keep them as stable as possible.
And the artist himself saw these as very temporary and was amazed that they were around for as long as they were, and he has passed away quite a few years ago by now. So they have lived a very long life, and they're much loved by this community, and they've lived a long life.
And the post office, the future of the post office and the ownership of it is uncertain at this point. So, so we can't guarantee that we could protect it anyway. So I think at this point, our inclination is to go with the photography, high-res photography route for this particular piece.
I would agree with the high res, but my quick question is, if we were taking a high res, would that mean we'd want to try to fix up some of the markings or leave them as is for the high res ones?
Well, I haven't looked at the piece closely since we had such a wet winter, which might be one thing, but also working on the building, then we need to get permissions to work on the piece. So I would need to look more closely at them and see if they deteriorated further, but my inclination would be more to photograph them as they are, rather than have someone else come in and work on them and then photograph that as Greg Brown's mural.
You could fix it in Photoshop if you wanted to. You don't want me playing around with Photoshop. So there's no Morgan Bricka solution to this. That's too messy.
We'll get to that later, but no.
Okay. So I would say if there isn't a Morgan Bricka fix for this that's not crazy expensive, then yeah, I'd recommend the vinyl. Because we looked at that, the photos and then a vinyl reproduction if we decide to reproduce it. The vinyl, Nadia, I don't know if you remember, I think you mentioned it's not that expensive to produce those. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. All right.
Like $15. I really like this piece. It really adds some whimsy to the building, but if it gets to the point where you can't really look at it anymore, then what would happen? Would the wall be removed? We could move the wall someplace, or would you just paint over it, I guess? Just paint over it and just have the digital image. But you could make postcards and other things out of that too, you know. So, pardon? Yeah. Yeah. But I agree. I think like Rai was saying, it's over 40 years, and it's a hell of a long time for a mural to be around, like especially in the weather.
I just also like to, I mean, they're beloved and they're wonderful. I just, along with this conversation, I'd love to make sure we're running in parallel, always looking out for mural artists to bring, new mural artists to bring to Palo Alto, to continue the tradition, and to, you know, there's a reason why these are beloved, and it's not just Greg Brown. I mean, this is sort of universal. It's very high quality. They're whimsical. They make you smile. These are like universal qualities of loved murals, and they might not be, you know, exactly what every single person loves the best, but everybody loves. So we should always, you know, as we're considering the deaccession, how to replace them. I think we should have murals everywhere in the city.
I love that you said that, Amanda, because you're almost parroting exactly what Councilmember Niss, who is the liaison for this body, said when we presented the Public Art Master Plan to council and the topic of the murals came up. And we do have some language about kind of paraphrasing that point in the plan.
Great, thank you. Year of the Ocean. We've done it.
It looks beautiful.
So, I mean,
Oh, you did? It's
Because
it was, because you did it's a great.
It is great.
so glad. Again, it's not a permanent fix, but the conditions of that tunnel, until their infrastructure changes to that tunnel, this ended up being a great solution. So, so it buys us some more time. And one of the great things that we learned in the course of doing this project is how attached people are to the undersea mural. And it really made me start to think about, what if we had decided to go with something larger and a complete redo, that it might have actually, which well, the budget considerations, I think, made that, probably took that off the table, but that, it's interesting that could have had a very different response than perhaps we would have anticipated. So people are attached to the mural. That's great. So that one's checked off.
Yep.
Okay, the next item is also on California Avenue, because California Avenue has a high concentration of artwork. So this is a piece, California Avenue, California Native by Susan Steinman, commissioned in 1997. So it's a combination of elements. A lot of it is land art, so you have these banners that have native animals and plants that are installed on several posts as you enter California Avenue. It was meant to be this gateway. The island has native California plants planted in it. There are a number of the granite boulders on both sides of the crosswalks and in that central island. And then there was a community outreach element of it, and there were those inscribed bricks on both sides of that crosswalk. Now, the ARG report did note that the conditions there have changed. So when the streetscape was done, those bricks all had to be removed, and they had to be replaced, but in different places because there needed to be ADA ramps. And the center island was narrowed, and some of the poles came out, so we ended up putting multiple banners on one pole. So what I'm saying is that a lot of the conditions have changed that we do feel have compromised the integrity of the artwork. And inherently, it's landscape artwork is difficult to maintain over a long period of time and have it really read. So the master plan recommendations really echo that. The environmental artwork has been severely compromised by retrofits to the streetscape that have taken place since its original 1997 installation. Again, I would love to hear input from the commission about what your feeling is.
What's the life expectancy of the flags?
The flags have been reprinted about every 5 to 7 years.
And with this lot of rain that we had this last winter, the environmental stuff there could just be overgrown with other stuff, and like you were saying, it's really hard to maintain. So I just can't see. I don't know how much it costs to maintain that, to send somebody out there to pull weeds or whatever you have to do to, and plus the flags, if you have to do that every few years. So maybe it's time for this one to sail away into the sunset as well.
What is the art? Is it just the flags? I can't even see what's in there. The landscape.
It's the landscaping in the island. They're all native plants that are part of an artist-approved plant schedule. There are the boulders on either side, those granite boulders. So they're in the median and also on both ends of the crosswalks on both sides of California Avenue. And then the inscribed bricks as you enter that crosswalk that goes across the narrower piece of that.
Okay. So what would deaccessioning mean? I mean, I can obviously see, okay, you take the banners down or you stop replacing them. What does it mean independent of the flags?
It would mean that the flags would come down. It would mean that we would remove the artist's name, because I think there are a number of people who actually see the plaque and have trouble understanding what the artwork is, because it's on one side of that crosswalk over one of the boulders that's used as a seating element. So most likely some of those elements would be reintegrated in California Avenue and other areas, or could be removed to some other area because they're natural pieces. But it would open up that area for potentially something else. So I know at one time there was a proposal to plant a tree in that median, and it was not allowed because of the artwork. So it's hindered some of California Avenue's business district's desires for that space to have a different kind of larger impactful sign there, because the median is seen as part of the artist's work. So it has hindered some of the desires of that business community. But I think more to the point is that the environment has changed so much that the artwork is really difficult to discern at this point.
It's similar to Go Mama in a lot of ways. Sort of everything has changed around it. And the flags used to be on multiple, so there's 3 in total, or how many in total are
There
there?
are 7 flags in total. And there are other poles that are further
Further
down
down
the
the street.
avenue. Oh, see here, you can see a couple of them.
Right,
Here and here.
got it.
So there are 2 others on this side.
So I have so just so I'm clear, so the landscaping, since you said correlated to the flags of the art, would be basically, can I be fair and assume that we'll let it kind of die off, so to speak, and then replace it, or taking it out, or is that not affect?
Well, the
You know,
California
I'm-
Avenue Business District would like to have changing bright colored flowers.
Right, okay.
That they plant in there like they do different areas.
Okay, so we would take all that landscaping out and then put new, right?
Well,
I just want to be clear.
the-
I understand her.
That's out of my hands what they're going to plant there, so.
But
that-
basically, if we say this artwork is being deaccessioned, just to clarify what Jim was saying, what does that exactly mean? I'm still unclear. So it's going to be the banners, and then
the poles?
and the poles.
Well, depending, the poles then may be repurposed by the business district for promotional type things, so, but yes, we would take the banners down. What happens with the poles would be up to them. The poles were actually in existence before Susan was commissioned, so she repurposed those poles
Okay.
as part of the artwork. So we would remove the banners, we would remove the plaque, and then whatever elements having to do with the streetscape that no longer make sense, then that
Can you
district,
explain
they
what
would be
that
clear to
mean-
move that.
Can you explain what that means? I'm unclear about what that.
The
when you say-
boulders,
Okay.
the
yeah.
bricks, the banners, and the plantings.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure. So I feel that there should be some new flowers and new plants. And I also, as much as I think the banners are unique, I think their time has come. But I think it would be kind of nice to have new banners ideally, but that's kind of not our decision per se, but.
Does it have to all be done whole cloth? Can those 4 elements that you mentioned be broken up? Like if we said we're deaccessioning this, would the artist have to consent to saying, oh, well, the community would like to keep the bricks and lose the flags? I mean, or does it all have to be as one piece?
She very much sees it as one
She
piece.
does, okay. All
And
right.
so once it's deaccessioned, she would, we would remove her name from it because it's as though,
It's her piece.
if you had 5 totems that create this environment
take
and someone
one
just
away.
said, I took one and it says, this is Jim Migdal's art, you would feel like
Yeah.
that's not a
Okay.
fair representation. So,
So my recommendation would be to deaccession.
I support that.
That sign is not part of the artwork.
the sign was pre-existing.
Okay.
What she did do was put that California poppy yellow around the outside edge of it. And so that's the way she integrated the sign into her project. But it's also prevented, because she liked the natural stone elements of it, it has prevented a change of signage.
Well, give the business district an opportunity then to, like you were saying, put in something new.
Can I ask you, if, when the business district does come up with something new, will it come before the commission? Or not necessarily?
If it's not public art related, the commission generally doesn't review landscape plans, so I wouldn't see that it would.
How about signage?
The commission really doesn't review signage either, so I don't know why it would come back.
Thank you.
Yeah. The next item is also on California Avenue. This is Untitled 2002 by Chris Johansson. It's right there by the Starbucks. A very heavily used alley, and there's a triptych of murals there. This particular one, you can see, has suffered a rather large gouge. There was some construction that was taking place there, and there was a period of time where there were a number of news boxes that were temporarily placed right in front of it. The news boxes, I'm glad to report, have all been moved away. But we are left with this gouge in the Chris Johansson piece. And so the ARG report has a pretty straightforward sort of patch and in-painting plan to repair the piece. It is unlikely that we would get Chris Johansson himself to come work on the piece at this point because his career has skyrocketed since he did this for the city. But we could potentially have someone come repair this, which is more the direction that that we would plan to go. The master plan consultants recommended once again doing the photograph option, but we do feel like that spot repair could be done at relatively low cost, and then perhaps we have them high-res photographed, because that is a privately owned building. You just never know what may happen, and in fact, before it was recently renovated, when it changed hands, and the proposal came forward for the new building, originally they were going to paint over all 3 of those murals and put a trellis with a climbing vine there. And we were able to call the owner and talk to him a little bit about the artists and the artwork that's on the side of the building, and he graciously agreed to leave them intact and paint around them. But we may not always be so lucky. So at this point, I would say staff is inclined to repair this and photograph it rather than deaccession or get rid of it.
Good plan.
Okay. Any other comments on the Chris Johansson? Okay. Okay, so this one is also done. We can check the box. So Lady Watering from 1976, also a Greg Brown, very beloved older mural. And this one, it's important to note, is on the side of the Palo Alto Toy and Sport building, which just went out of business. So we don't know what will happen in that building. But she did get rather zombie-like, as someone said, over the course of the years, and several graffiti attacks. Because the nature of her facial pose, people tend to put lots of things in the negative space there in front of her. So that piece has suffered a number of attacks and needed some help. And this actually was one that we were able to call someone in to do a little bit of matching and painting on the piece just to prolong its life. And so this one's been addressed for now, but this is another one now that it's been addressed. It would be good to photograph, especially because they just went out of business. And again, we can't really protect it. It's on private property. So it may be worthwhile to photograph and then consider if we want to reinstall her somewhere.
Thanks. The plan for so given that we have a couple that are done, what's the urgency or the time frame that you're thinking about for doing the photographs? In the next few months?
Well, I think Nadia is looking into estimates for photographers who can do that work. And I'm unclear if we have enough left in this maintenance budget to encumber those funds or if it rolls into the beginning of the next fiscal year. But we would want to do that relatively soon before we get into the rainy season again. And then it takes a little time to put together a deaccession report and recommendation. So I'm estimating it'll probably be August, realistically, before we come forward with those. And I would really recommend that the commission look at the deaccession report or the deaccession policy, because deaccession can be an interesting process. And so I want to make sure you all are armed and ready for those discussions.
And just to add, the policy is not printed for the meeting, but they're available on the website. Mm-hmm.
I wanted to jump in before Code Art, if I could. Is this the time?
Sure.
So before Elise updates us on Code Art, I just have to take a moment to just tell you that these two women over here are just amazing, and I bow down to them. They've been working pretty much 24/7 to pull off Code Art, and I'm talking about, I don't know, I get probably 10 emails from Elise every weekend, late at night I get them, early morning I get them. And it's a tremendous amount of work, and they're very modest and very professional, so you would never see the incredible craze state that we're in pulling this off. But code art is going to be amazing and really tight because of how great a job Elisa and Nadia and Brittany are doing. I really appreciate the work that they're doing, and I'm very, very excited about it. I'm really proud to work with them. And also with you, I just want to say this commission as a body has just evolved into a really just, right, Amanda? Am I right? I mean, it's just a total pleasure. It's really different than 5 years ago when I first came to the city. And so I just want to commend the whole public art program, staff and commissioners on really great work and great collaborative spirit and great professionalism. And with that, I'm going to let Elise
Thank you, Rai.
guide you through the amazing code art experience.
Okay, so this is happening. So we have a few updated renderings on the site, but code art is happening. We have a great kickoff event. We sent an email previously about the kickoff event. If you're unable to make it to the event at Institute for the Future, please let us know so we can make that seat available because seating is very limited. Okay. But we need help. It's going to take about 100 volunteers over the course of the 3 days to pull this off. And so we really need help getting the word out on the volunteering. Mostly the volunteers will be helping with setup and breakdown and being stationed at some of those intervention sites with iPads and conducting 6-question surveys. Because part of what we want to do is really gather a lot of input. Where are people coming from? Did they come for code art? What is it about each installation that they responded to? They can leave a comment and they can enter an email for code art part 2. Gulp. But we really want to engage people. So we want to gather all that input, and there will be a follow-up workshop that takes place June 9th, where we will talk about the results of those surveys, and Institute for the Future is going to facilitate some futuring exercises where we can talk about how we see those results blending in with where we see the future of downtown Palo Alto going, and what are those potential futures, what are the opportunities we should look to. And so if any of the commissioners want to be engaged in that workshop, please let me know. It's I believe 10 to noon on Friday, June 9th. And so we're inviting a cross-section of the urban intervention teams, downtown business association, Stanford city planning staff, historians, and getting them engaged in that. So we're looking for a group of about 20 to 25 people. And so I really would like to make sure that the Public Art Commission has a couple of people there to engage in that discussion. Okay. Great. And so on our page, you can see, okay, Future Cities Lab, they're going to start setting up that Tuesday. Some of the other installations will start setting up on Wednesday, and then Thursday mornings when they all go in. They all officially open immediately following that lunchtime event at Institute for the Future. Here's an updated rendering of the sensory garden, and yesterday we went out and tested the first box of bell harps. So they are underway, and actually this is Megan, who's the muralist we heard about earlier. She's going to start the wall drawings starting on Tuesday. And she'll be on site for several days working on those. Trying to think what other updates. I'm going to visit Caustic Chasm tomorrow to look at their construction. And then Street Talk, as you may recall, we needed to find a new location for it. We were planning to put it directly across the street, over a couple of the windows of what is actually development services for the city. So while they're talking about how do we map out our best future and having all these different avenues of discussion on this tree, what's taking place inside development services right behind them is where people go with their plans to physically submit building plans. So it's kind of interesting siting and is the entrance to Centennial Way, where Ben Fleto's piece will be in Centennial Way. So we went to visit him last night. And that structure is built, and all the all the plastic triangles are there, and they, during the day, will project all sorts of beautiful colors. And then, of course, he's got the motor mechanisms up above and the motion sensors. So, so it's a very complex machine. And then Mateo Garcia, we did a test of one of the sections of his LED lights a couple weeks ago, and he is soldering away like crazy. And so that installation will start on Wednesday morning, I think. And then the bottom one, which is a partnership with Green Waste, will all be done with those blue recycling buddies. And they're working on having a station where they can have children's activities and whatnot there too. So they're looking to really engage families in that environment. So we're really excited. Please help us get out the word about coming and attending Code Art, and certainly volunteering.
Do you have to be, can you be, what's the minimum age to be a volunteer?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, we need people who are going to be able to conduct surveys and/or help move things around or do volunteer check-in.
So high school kids can do it.
So, yeah, high school kids can definitely do it. We sent something to Pally, you know, certainly saying, we'll sign your paperwork, you'll get credit for it, please come. So, yeah, high school
Did you get
students
good
don't-
response from Pally?
Not yet. I mean, the calls.
Just went out,
Yeah,
okay.
just went out. And our experience has been the high school kids don't sign up a long time in advance.
No.
They tend to wait.
Send me a text.
It's, yeah, they'll either show up or not. So that's it. Are there any questions on Code Art?
I don't want to add to your workload, but is there a place where you tell us where you want us or what you need from us, all the dates? Because I got an email about signing up, but then this is in addition, June 9th is then in addition to that, is that right?
June 9th is the follow-up workshop at Institute for the Future where we analyze all the data gathered during Code Art.
That's great.
Yeah, so that's a separate event.
Okay.
There's a website that she's gonna, Nadia's gonna resend us to sign up.
But the June 9th is not on that website. That's a separate event.
June 1st is the kickoff.
June 1st is the
June
kickoff,
9th
which you all
is-
have a reserved seat at that kickoff event, unless you let me know you won't be there, so we can surrender the seat to someone else.
What's the timing on the 9th, or do you want us on the 9th?
On the 9th, I will look at it, it's 10 to noon, I
10
think.
to noon, we'll send out an email with details about that meeting, and for the June 9th meeting, we want you to be part of that conversation. We're not asking to volunteer.
I'll ask you after the meeting about the June 1st.
Super exciting. So is this 10 times more work than you expected this was going to be?
Maybe not 10 times as much work.
It's a lot more work.
It's definitely a lot of cat herding. Wow. But it's a lot of work, but we knew it would be when we took it on. Just trying to do that in addition to everything else has been a challenge. And we are working with a consultant that we brought on board to help us with a lot of the logistics. So it's not Nadia and I driving around with the box truck at the end of every night and loading and unloading everything. Thankfully, we've brought some folks on to help us coordinate that. Generator rentals, all that kind of good stuff, gaffer's tape, someone else is going to be boots on the ground handling a lot of that, but getting us to that point certainly has taken a lot of work. But that's why this is a pilot, so we know what goes into it, we know what some of the advantages and pitfalls are, if we decide we want to do a second version of it.
Is there a plan so there's the survey stuff, but can you remind me, is there a plan to record it in video or something? So if someone that missed it, like what you had for Truth Booth, is there something in the budget for that? Or
We have a videographer who is going to be working very closely with us over the course of the 3 days. The same one who did that piece on Truth Booth. And so he works for the communications office here for the city of Palo Alto.
Oh, great. So he's already on staff.
Yeah, so the communications office has been a great partner to us and is really helping us leverage what connections we can get for videographers, for getting the word out with press.
Great.
All of that.
And is there a way, adding on to that, for people if they take photos or things to, I don't use hashtags, but like are ways that we can upload?
Yeah, we heavily utilize now social media. We'll have designated hashtags, which will be available at each site. We'll have very distinct signage for each installation, and we encourage everybody to tweet, Instagram, Facebook, and just, exactly, yes, use conversation piece.
All right, I will be getting the word out to. I will be getting the word out to the teenagers. So I think it's the June 1st is after exam. So I think a lot of the students are.
I think it's the last day of
Yeah,
exams.
it's the last day of school.
Yeah.
So some may have them, some may not.
Yeah. Okay.
But we still need help on the second and third.
Yeah. No. That's good. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all your work. It's going to be amazing, and we're excited. Thanks.
Thanks for all your support and getting out there, yeah.
So, in terms of announcement, any announcements, anyone? No, okay. So our next meeting is we're skipping June because there's going to be so much going on with Code Art. And July 21st is our next meeting. 21st is what it says here.
Yeah, it's a mistake.
Oh, the 20th. Okay, thanks, Ben.
Eagle eye.
He knows all his Thursdays. Great. Awesome meeting. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.
Thank you.